The Case of the Vanished Watercolor. Paris, 1923. The spring sky painted the city in soft tones, but the Morel family's parlor was buzzing with tension. Monsieur Morel, one of the great art collectors of the left bank, had just lost a small treasure, a newly acquired watercolor by Raoul Dufy. A sketch of vibrant colors, unique. "It's gone! No one came in or out. We're locked inside this house," cried Monsieur Morel, desperate. Pierre Durand surveyed the room, closed windows, anxious faces, and there, Jeanne, the maid, sweeping the floor. But something caught his attention. She was holding the broom by the very tip of the handle, as if afraid to touch the rest. He approached slowly and took a closer look at the broom handle. It looked odd, thicker. With a quick motion, he began to unwrap the hidden paper. There it was, Dufy's watercolor, intact. A dead silence fell over the room. Jeanne collapsed to her knees, tears in her eyes. I just wanted... I sold my years to this house. I dreamed of seeing the sea. Marseille. Morel exploded, but Pierre raised his hand. "Monsieur, a maid dreams like all of us, but crime cannot be wiped away with tears." Morel took a deep breath and looked Pierre in the eye. "But how did you know, Pierre? How did you know the watercolor was in the broom?" Pierre smiled faintly. "Simple. No one sweeps holding the broom by the tip of the handle. Sweeping is a chore one wants to finish quickly, never prolong. Only someone with something to hide would sweep like that." There was a moment of surprise, and everyone laughed at Pierre's cleverness, until Rebecca, the owner's daughter, who had remained silent until then, spoke. "Pierre, only someone who has something even worse waiting sweeps slowly. Sometimes, the next chore is the real nightmare." Pierre stared at her, raising an eyebrow. For a moment, the tension broke. He let out a hearty laugh. Pierre then remarked with a smile, Indeed. And everyone laughed at the situation. Everyone? Except Jeanne, of course. The end. The Secret of the Plaisir d'Or, Paris, 1923. The sweet scent of almonds and melted butter filled Rue des Martyrs, where the discreet bijou confectionery displayed in its window the coveted Plaisir d'Or, a golden, delicate, and perfect little cake. Pierre Durand, his dark brown hair tucked under a navy blue beret, pushed open the glass door of the small shop. The bell chimed softly. "Madame Bijou, one Plaisir d'Or, s'il vous plaît." The petite lady, her white hair tied in a bun, smiled and served the cake, but her eyes revealed concern. It took only a few words for Pierre to notice her unease. "You know, Monsieur Durand, I received an offer from a certain Monsieur Leclerc, owner of Douceurs de Paris. He wanted to buy my recipe. I refused. Now, I feel like I'm being watched." Pierre raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, madame? People come in, buy nothing, just stare. They keep an eye on the kitchen. I know they're sent by Leclerc, but how can I prove it?" Pierre glanced around. Outside, a violinist played endlessly, facing the window. "That violinist, is he always there?" "Since last week. Never buys anything. Strange, non?" Pierre smiled slyly. His eyes gleamed with an idea. "Madame, let's have a little fun. Take any canister, a pantry tin, and label it corn flour. Inside, fill it with refined sugar. Whenever you prepare the Plaisir d'Or, use one measure from that tin. If the recipe calls for 3 cups of sugar, use 2 regular and 1 from the flour tin." Madame Bijou widened her eyes. "But why?" Pierre stood, adjusting his beret. "If anyone spies, they'll see you using corn flour in the recipe. They'll try to copy it. And their cakes will be awful, bland, dense. Their imitation will be a disaster. The next morning, the violinist was gone. And a week later, Douceur de Paris launched the Délices Dorées. Just one bite was enough for customers to notice. It was bland, heavy, a complete failure. Leclerc never dared to spy again. Madame Bijou, laughing and crying, hugged Pierre. Mon garçon, from now on, your plaisirs d'or will always be on the house. Pierre adjusted his burgundy tie and winked. The sweetness of victory, madame. The Treasure at the Dufour Mansion, Paris, 1924. A fine drizzle gave a silver sheen to the old Saint-Maur mansion, where the wake of Monsieur Armand Dufour gathered a few discreet guests. Among them was Pierre Durand, a 17-year-old about to enter medical school, but with an uncommon knack for mysteries. In the music room, surrounded by noble woods and heavy curtains, Pierre found the heir, Lucien Dufour, looking lost. Pierre, I don't know what to do. I have no money to keep this house. I'll have to sell it, Lucien confessed. Pierre sat at the grand piano. On it rested a yellowed sheet of music titled, My Treasure for You. Curious, Pierre played the first notes, when the deep sound of the chapel bell echoed. 3 chimes, 3 o'clock. He frowned. The melody matched the bell's tone. Intrigued, he read the lyrics. At the highest place, my love stands, timeless in grace, unspoken demands. Your outstretched hand reveals a path untold, where a single gem crowns a hidden trove of gold. Pierre smiled. It was a map, a sound map. Lucien, I think your father left you one last present. They climbed the chapel tower, the highest place. But there was nothing, only the view of the gardens. What stood out was the statue of Aphrodite at the fountain. She seemed frozen in time, silent, as if guarding a secret. Without wasting time, they hurried toward the fountain. Pierre glanced again at the paper. Your outstretched hand reveals a path untold. The marble statue pointed, not toward the gate, but the old dog kennel, Blanche's place. Pierre knelt inside, inspecting the floor. His fingers tapped a loose board. They lifted it. An aged iron chest lay hidden. Inside, dozens of gold bars gleamed. Lucien laughed, relieved. I always knew the money was with one of his bitches, the old scoundrel. They both laughed, grateful they no longer had to sell the house. The end. The Mystery of the Diamond, L'Étoile de Paris. That night, the Museum of Arts and Antiquities glowed under the golden light of the street lamps. Parisian high society gathered for a historic event. The exhibition of France's largest diamond, L'Étoile de Paris. Pierre Durand, sharp-eyed and wearing his navy blue beret, moved discreetly through the crowd. Young but already known for his keen mind, he was personally invited by the museum's director, Dr. Armand Lefebvre. The grand hall buzzed. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and the scent of cognac mingled with fresh peonies. Madame Renée, the socialite, sipped her champagne. Merchant Girard savored his martini. Singer Colette hid behind her gin and tonic. And Colonel Duval, stern, held his whiskey. At 9 p.m., Dr. Lefebvre stepped onto the stage. Mesdames et messieurs, the moment has come. He pulled the red cord. The velvet curtain fell, revealing the unthinkable, an empty pedestal. Silence gripped the hall. Guards locked the doors. Pierre, I placed the diamond myself when the first guest arrived. No one has left. I'm ruined, the doctor whispered. Pierre scanned the room, observing every face and glass. Madame René's champagne sparkled under the lights. Girard's martini swirled lazily, while Colette tapped her glass, staring into her gin and tonic. Yet, Pierre's attention settled on the colonel, unmoving, his whiskey untouched. Pierre approached the colonel, his own glass raised, a calm smile masking the sharp glint of certainty in his eyes. "Colonel Duval, a toast? A toast? To what?" Pierre smirked. "To your last day of freedom." Without hesitation, Pierre reached into Duval's glass and pulled out a large, gleaming cube. "Here is the diamond." Gasps filled the air. "How did you know?" Dr. Lefebvre stammered. Pierre explained. "All the chilled drinks, naturally, have condensation. Except his." Pierre continued. A careless glance would have mistaken the diamond for a piece of ice. But the colonel forgot one crucial detail. The diamond, unlike ice, left no trace of cold. Dr. Lefebvre let out a nervous laugh. What a reckless plan. Swallowing a sharp diamond would hurt, especially coming out. Laughter erupted as guards took the colonel away. Pierre adjusted his beret and whispered, "The perfect crime never survives a careful eye." The end. The poisoning on the train to Calais, Paris, 1924. The train left Gare du Nord at night, heading for Calais. In first class, 17-year-old Pierre Durand read calmly. He had no idea that this night would bring him his first mystery away from home. At 10 p.m., British diplomat Sir Henry Bellamy was found unconscious in his cabin. A bluish mark on his lips and a toppled glass of cognac suggested poisoning. The culprit was still on board. In the dining car, Commander Delatour studied a map with a tense expression. Pierre approached and said, "I'm a medical student. Perhaps I can help." Delatour hesitated, but agreed. They began questioning the first-class passengers. Pierre asked the Viscountess what time she had retired to her cabin. She replied it was around 9 p.m. Her lady's companion, when questioned, said she had been dismissed shortly after, at 9:15, and saw no one else. Monsieur Latour, a French banker, said he had been reading in his cabin and heard nothing. Then came George Whitmore, a young man traveling to compete at Wimbledon. Pierre asked about his bedtime routine. Around 9 p.m., Whitmore replied. Monsieur Leclerc entered, carrying the scent of a half-smoked cigar. Pierre asked him what time he had started smoking. "Right after dinner, around 9:30. I like to enjoy my cigar slowly," Leclerc replied naturally. Finally, Jacques Moreau, a biologist, appeared, also holding a cigar. Pierre asked what he had been doing during the time Sir Bellamy was poisoned. "I was smoking the whole time," Moreau answered. "And what time did that start?" Pierre asked. "Exactly 9:30. It's a personal ritual," he replied. Pierre looked closely at Moreau's cigar. It had barely been lit. Calmly, Pierre stood and covered Moreau's hands with a copy of l'illustration. "If you're not the culprit, then you wouldn't mind putting your fingers to your mouth. Even if they were, let's say, blue, right?" he said firmly. Moreau turned pale. He opened his mouth, but said nothing. After a few seconds of silence, and clearly unwilling to touch his own fingers, Pierre lifted the newspaper, revealing clean hands. But it no longer mattered. His behavior had betrayed him. With the help of the conductor and an undercover officer, Moreau was arrested. "But how did you know he was the culprit?" Pierre explained. He claimed he started smoking at the same time as the professor, but his cigar was practically untouched. The difference showed he was lying. And when he hesitated to bring his fingers to his mouth, I was sure he was the one. The train arrived in Calais on time. Pierre received a discreet golden pin from the railway company in thanks. The crossing to England awaited him, and with it, new mysteries. End of part 1. The emerald smuggling in the English Channel. On the foggy morning of September 4th, 1924, Pierre Durand, dressed in his navy blue suit and neatly adjusted beret, arrived at the port of Calais. He was on his way to London. The calm sea, like a painting, stretched out to the horizon. Already aboard the vessel, Pierre was approached by a robust gentleman with a thick mustache, who introduced himself as Mr. Whitmore, a wealthy sport fishing enthusiast and member of a nautical club in Boulogne-sur-Mer. "The weather is perfect for catching European sea bass," said Whitmore as he made his way to the bow. There he cast a squid bait into the sea and watched the waters. Pierre proceeded to the ship's dining hall, where he found Madame Devereux, an elegant widow of high society, Mademoiselle Claire, a young piano teacher with a dreamy air, and Monsieur Delorme, a gentleman with a thin mustache and ornate cane, who claimed to be a diplomat, but observed everything with uncommon attentiveness. The hall was quite impressive. Purple velvet curtains, golden columns, and in the center, a cylindrical aquarium filled with colorful fish. Above, a multicolored glass chandelier reflected lights over the finely set tables. Chef Aubert himself, with his traditional toque blanche and lofty expression, presented the menu. Tonight, we're serving saffron sauce sole filet, roasted duck with peaches, and cauliflower gnocchi with cranberry sauce. Everyone smiled, but the last dish clearly raised eyebrows. During dinner, a string quartet played softly in the background until the English coast appeared. However, upon arrival in Dover, no one was allowed to disembark. Officers boarded and began a thorough inspection. After a long wait, Pierre approached one of the officers. "Good afternoon. May I ask what you're looking for?" "Emeralds. We believe they're being smuggled aboard the ship." Pierre thought for a moment and said, "3 possible hiding places. Mr. Whitmore's squid bait still in the sea, the crystal chandelier above us, or the pebbles in the central aquarium. But I'd bet they're inside that cauliflower gnocchi with cranberry sauce." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Why is that?" Pierre smiled. "Because a dish like that could only have been designed so that no one would want to eat it. And, in fact, everyone avoided it." The kitchen was searched. Hidden within the gnocchi dough, shaped into the pieces, were small green spheres. They were emeralds. The chef was handcuffed, murmuring, "It was a perfect plan." As he was led away, Pierre commented, "If not for smuggling, the poor culinary judgment alone would have been enough to condemn him." Everyone laughed, relieved. The passengers were cleared to disembark. Pierre stepped onto English soil with a faint smile. End of Part 2. Murder at the Hotel Beresford, London, 1924. 17-year-old Pierre Durand had just stepped into the Hotel Beresford when the shaken receptionist told him a murder had taken place only hours earlier. Scotland Yard was upstairs. Inspector Halloran spotted him in the lobby. "What's your name?" "Pierre Durand." Halloran raised an eyebrow. "So it's you. I heard about Calais and the Emerald case. Let's see what you can do here. If you'll allow it, I'd like to help." The top floor, reserved for a European anatomy seminar, had become a crime scene. Dr. Elizabeth Morel, a French professor, had been found dead in her room. Estimated time of death, between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. All guests were confined to their rooms. Halloran led Pierre through the interviews. Room 208. Dr. Margot Lefebvre, still shaking. Said Elizabeth had stolen her research. Bitter, but no direct accusation. Room 209. Mr. Leonard Briggs, British publisher. Claimed he was in the lobby all evening reviewing proofs. Room 210. Nurse Clara Vernon, nervous. Said she'd been at the Crown and Rose with other seminar guests. Room 212. Henry Marlowe, calm. Stated he was at the pub from 7 to 11 with Sarah Whitmore. Room 215. Sarah Whitmore, poised. Confirmed Henry's story, adding details. Piano music, stout and gin. The moment Henry out of money. Outside, Pierre murmured, "Their accounts match too perfectly." Halloran nodded. A solid alibi. Pierre walked the short block to the Crown and Rose. The landlord remembered the couple at once. "Of course I remember them. The chap ran out of money, and the lady settled the bill. Never seen a fellow look so embarrassed. Lucky for him it wasn't their first date." Pierre frowned. "What do you mean by that?" "They were in 2 nights earlier. Same time. Same drinks." "Interesting," Pierre said. Back at the hotel, he asked Sarah, "Did you leave the pub at any point?" "Just to use the toilet." "Another guest said the ladies' toilet was out of order, and everyone queued for the gents. Did you wait long?" Sarah hesitated. "No, it was a short queue." Pierre folded his arms. "Do you know where else people queue for toilets?" Sarah blinked. "No. In prison, which is exactly where you're going, with Henry." Halloran's officers moved in. As the pair were led away, the inspector asked, "What tipped you off?" Pierre smiled. They rehearsed. They visited the pub earlier, memorized the setting, then performed the split bill routine to create a memorable scene the landlord would recall as their alibi for the night of the murder. But when you invent a lie, you can't predict real-world details. Inventing a broken lady's toilet was one detail too many. End of part 3. The Fine Taste of Victory. Yorkshire, England. Summer of 1925. The sky was clear, the hills rolled gently, and the small village of Bramblethorpe buzzed with a rare event. The final cricket match between the Bramblethorpe 11 and the neighboring town of West Hollow. Among the guests was Pierre Durand, a 17-year-old Frenchman in a blue beret, invited by his British professor. During the tea break, chaos broke out. The police were called, and organizers announced that no one could leave until questioned. The festive mood turned tense. "The trophy has vanished," shouted the chief judge, a ruddy man with a thick mustache. The crowd stirred. The centuries-old silver trophy, pride of the club, was gone. The podium stood empty, a lace cloth folded over a lonely cushion. Did someone enter the pavilion? All doors were guarded. It must have been stolen, Pierre calmly observed. The tea tent was elegant. White linens, silverware, floral wicker chairs, and fine china. Guests were helping themselves to scones, sandwiches, and fragrant leek and potato soup, served from an ornate silver vessel carried by a young woman from the buffet staff. "This soup is excellent," commented Sir Alistair. Pierre frowned. The vessel was unusual. When he served himself, he examined it closely. Delicately sculpted handles, solid silver, an engraved crest. One he had seen that morning. He turned to the young woman with curiosity. "What a refined reception. Even the utensils are impeccable," said Pierre. Then, with a glance, he added, "This tureen is unique. Is it used often at club events?" "Forgive me. Where is it from?" "Oh, we don't usually use it. The buffet's tureen broke earlier, so we borrowed this from the club. I found it on a red cushion in the ceremonial tent. It had no lid, so I thought it would be perfect for soup." Pierre's eyes sparkled. He smiled faintly. With a subtle gesture, he tapped a fork on a crystal glass, producing a chime that drew attention. "Mr. Chief Judge, I believe the missing trophy is now seasoned with leek." Laughter rippled through the room. The young woman blushed. Everyone resumed eating. Some went back for more soup, laughing. The event's organizer, still stunned, added, "Who knows? Maybe soup in the trophy will become a tradition." Sir Alistair approached Pierre and asked, "But how, lad? How did you know?" Pierre adjusted his burgundy tie and replied with a calm glint in his eye, "The soup had a fine taste of victory." The end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case. The Enigma of the Pale Tongue, Oxford, 1925. The first light of morning gilded the stone towers of the old university as Pierre Durand, dressed in his impeccable dark blue suit and neatly adjusted beret, stepped out of a taxi in front of the imposing Pembroke College. Invited for an exclusive visit to the legendary Bodleian Library, he felt both honored and curious. At the door, 4 figures awaited him. Professor Edgar Whitmore, of Natural Sciences, Professor Samuel Caldwell, a specialist in ancient literature, Chancellor Leonard Greaves, of Biology, and Professor Arthur Wycliffe, of Medieval History. After brief greetings, the professors led him through the main hall to the section dedicated to English literature. Pierre listened attentively when suddenly Professor Whitmore began to cough violently. The sound echoed among the silent shelves. He staggered, clutched his throat, and collapsed with one arm stretched out. The librarian, Miss Evans, let out a muffled scream. Professor Wycliffe knelt to assist the colleague, but it was too late. Whitmore lay lifeless. As his head was gently lowered, the professor's mouth fell open, revealing a tongue completely white. Pierre was stunned. He had never seen anything like it. The police were called, and all exits were sealed. While the officers secured the scene, the remaining professors exchanged uneasy glances, murmuring about the strange phenomenon. Chancellor Greaves, with his thinning hair and weary gaze, commented, "In all my long academic life, I have never witnessed anything like this, although I vaguely recall reading something about cases involving white tongues." Greaves's words sparked an idea in Pierre's mind. a spark that quickly turned into action. He leaned towards Miss Evans and asked, "Mademoiselle, could you show me the book loan records for the past 2 weeks?" Intrigued, the librarian guided him to a polished wooden counter and handed him a thick ledger. Pierre skimmed through it carefully as the professors gathered around him, anxious. He paused, his finger marking a line. Reading aloud, he announced, "Silent essences, rare poisons of the ancient world. Borrowed just a few days ago by..." He paused briefly, and everyone leaned in, holding their breath. Samuel Caldwell. A murmur of surprise rippled through the group, and all eyes turned astonished to Caldwell, who turned pale, took a step back, and, in a sudden impulse, tried to flee, unsuccessfully. The police quickly restrained him. As the culprit was handcuffed, Greaves, still shocked, turned to Pierre and asked, "At such a young age, how did you think to check the library records?" Pierre adjusted his beret calmly and replied, "In truth, it was the rarity of the case that caught my attention. If even the esteemed Chancellor Greaves, a specialist in biology, knew little about such a poison, I concluded that the murderer would have needed careful research." One of the professors, admiring, murmured, "Brilliant?" Pierre smiled slightly and added, "Actually, the brilliance was the victim's." When Professor Whitmore collapsed, his finger remained extended, pointing to a book on the shelf. The author, Samuel Caldwell. I only needed to find confirmation in the records. Another professor, with a tired smile, commented, "It's fortunate that you're only beginning your academic life, Pierre. You can understand even the dead, while we, at our age, barely understand ourselves." They all laughed softly, and the group resumed their tour of the legendary library under the golden light filtering through the Gothic windows. The end. Da Vinci's Bicycle, London, 1925. A light rain tapped against the windows of the opulent British Museum, while the Special Evaluation Hall welcomed a rather peculiar guest. Pierre Durand, 17 years old, navy blue beret over brown hair and sharp eyes behind a modest burgundy tie. He was the youngest guest invited to the institution that year. "Monsieur Durand, welcome. Prepare yourself to witness something even the greatest minds of the Renaissance could hardly have imagined," said the chief curator, Sir Aldous Pembroke, leading him into a smaller room with padded walls and controlled lighting. Inside, 3 experts awaited. At the center, holding a worn leather folder, stood an elegant yet uneasy man, Monsieur Battista, the supposed owner of one of the most unbelievable finds of the century. "Before we reveal the piece, one condition. Please lower the lighting. The paper is fragile, and strong light could damage it," he said, with a tone that hovered between authority and caution. The lights dimmed gently. Battista opened the folder with ceremonial flair and withdrew a yellowed sheet of paper. Everyone leaned in. It was, supposedly, a complete design by none other than Leonardo da Vinci, and astonishingly, it depicted a bicycle. Pierre held his breath for a moment. The lines were incredibly fine, the calculations precise, and the bicycle looked like something that wouldn't be fully realized until the late 19th century. Chain, frame geometry, fork trail, everything was there, flawless. Sir Pembroke was astonished. "My God! If this is authentic, it will be an exceptional piece for the museum." But Pierre, silent, kept analyzing. He crossed his arms and stepped closer. "Ladies and gentlemen, this design is fake. I'm sorry to say." Silence fell like a thunderclap. Battista scoffed with contempt. "Boy, you don't know what you're talking about." Pierre turned to the curator. "Sir Pembroke, look closely at the design and tell me, what's wrong with it?" The curator examined the sheet for long seconds. "I see no flaws. It's extraordinarily coherent." Pierre gave a faint smile. "Exactly. It's perfect. And that's precisely what makes it suspicious." The curator's gaze faltered. Pierre continued. "Leonardo da Vinci was brilliant, but also fiercely protective of his ideas. It was common for him to insert intentional errors in his notebooks, subtle flaws that prevented opportunists from replicating his inventions. The perfection of this design is, ironically, its biggest lie." Battista turned pale. "This bicycle could be built today without a single correction, And that's something Da Vinci would never have allowed. A true genius guarded his genius, Pierre concluded. The room fell into silence. Batista, cornered, tucked the drawing away without a word. Even so, Sir Pembroke cleared his throat. Nevertheless, I'll offer 10% of the original value. Not for authenticity, but for impact. Imagine the exhibition. Da Vinci's only perfect design. The controversy alone will draw crowds. Pierre was stunned. But you're buying a lie? Pembroke gave a wistful smile. I'm investing in curiosity. With ticket sales, we can fund real research, uncover true discoveries. A famous fake can support the pursuit of many truths. Monsieur Durand. Pierre glanced one last time at the false drawing, then at the man who tried to deceive them. And then, with a resigned sigh, he simply said, "The world, it seems, has its own ways of being ingenious." The end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case. The Last Royal Note at Covent Garden, London, 1925. The Covent Garden Theatre gleamed like a jewel beneath London's Victorian arcades. It was a gala night celebrating the Queen's Jubilee. Ladies in satin gloves and gentlemen in tailcoats crossed the marble hall, crystal chandeliers casting flickers of candlelight. Among them stood a young man in a navy suit and snug beret. Pierre Durand, 17, future medical student, invited thanks to a friendship forged during a Paris-Calais train ride with the head of Crown Security. The evening's star, soprano Magdalena Bellini, was renowned for reaching the climax of Guglielmo Andrade's aria, When Stars Fall, with a power said to shatter glass. To keep electric bulbs from bursting, the theater had been lit solely by candles. The orchestra swelled, the choir soared, and the aria climbed toward its summit. One note, pure and possibly high, sliced through the air like a scalpel of crystal. A snap, a second, silence. The candles in the royal box extinguished. Darkness. Immediately, emergency candles were lit. Screams erupted. "The crown!" a court lady cried. "It's gone!" Doors slammed shut. No one in or out. As guards formed a cordon, Pierre stayed close to his friend, the security chief. The Queen, composed, said, "The instant the lights died, I felt the crown lifted from my head." Lord Ashcombe whispered, "No one saw a thing, Your Majesty." It was pitch black. Pierre frowned. Candles. Shards of glass glittered on the carpet. One perfect note. And darkness. "We assumed candles meant constant light," he murmured. "Indeed," the chief said under his breath. Pierre drew a steady breath. "Imagine I wore a glass eye," he began softly. "If it shattered mid-performance, I'd simply close my lids and pretend to sleep, hiding the ruin." The Queen looked at him, intrigued. "What are you trying to say?" Let's for a moment imagine that, at the height of a performance, the crown jewels, if made of flawless glass, were fractured by Bellini's high note. That would mean the candles were not extinguished to cover a theft, but to hide the shatter, to preserve the illusion. Let's be honest, no one could extinguish a candle by hand without being noticed, unless there was a greater reason. In my view, the candles were extinguished deliberately. The Queen's shoulders slackened. "During the Great War, we traded the true jewels for weapons and provisions," he whispered. "They fed soldiers, secured our sovereignty." Pierre bowed. "Your Majesty, the people value those who fight for them, even more so when done in silence. That choice demands more courage than 1,000 coronations." The Queen smiled, but it was a melancholic smile. "If this is revealed, the people may indeed admire me as a person, acknowledge my courage and the sacrifice. But beyond my figure, there's something greater. The spirit, of the realm, and that must remain strong and intact. That is why the secret must remain hidden. She turned to Pierre. Now that you know the secret of the British monarchy, I'm afraid you must. Pierre froze and thought quickly. Guards advanced. With all due respect, there's no need for that. Your stance doesn't inspire fear in me, Your Majesty, but reverence. And with your permission, I would like to consider this a secret between friends, and a silence I will carry, not as a burden, but as a moral vow and a deeply personal allegiance. After a tense pause, she raised a gloved hand. I shall consider. Near dawn, the royal entourage departed quietly. 2 guards escorted Pierre to the carriage. In his vest pocket lay a shard of emerald-rimmed glass, proof of what had shattered and of what must never be revealed. The end. Beauty is the Death of Lord Redgrave. London, 1925. Winter blew cold through the city's illuminated streets as Pierre Durand arrived at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane at the invitation of Sir Percival Godwin to celebrate his 18th birthday. The evening's play starred the most beautiful actress in all of Europe, Madeleine Dufresne. After the performance, Pierre and Sir Percival Godwin went backstage to greet the actors. Madeleine, enchanting, invited them to join the cast for dinner. Pierre accepted without hesitation. He was already hypnotized by the actress's beauty and charm. During dinner, between laughter and glasses of wine, Madeleine gently mentioned she was trying to divorce Lord Redgrave, but he refused. Pierre blushed when Sir Percival Godwin joked, "Perhaps Pierre can help you? He's excellent at solving all sorts of problems." Everyone laughed. Madeleine leaned closer, placed her hand on Pierre's thigh, and whispered, "Would you help me, Pierre? Would you do that for me?" Alone afterward, Madeleine proposed continuing their talk at her Mayfair house, and Pierre agreed at once. There she poured a dark Bordeaux. He raised the glass with a smile. Moments later, she excused herself to change into something less formal. As soon as the door clicked shut, Pierre quietly decanted half the wine into an empty goblet and slid it behind the cut-glass decanters in the china cabinet. Madeleine returned in provocative lingerie. "Pierre, I have a problem." In the bedroom. Enchanted, he followed her. The two sat on the bed and embraced, wrapped in an atmosphere of desire and mystery. He woke up to pounding at the door the next morning. "The police?" Madeleine answered in a robe. One of the officers said, "Madame Dufresne, you are under arrest for the murder of Lord Redgrave." "But that's impossible. I didn't leave the house all night." The officer raised an eyebrow. "Is there anyone who can confirm that, madam?" At that moment, Pierre appeared, arriving in the room still hurriedly dressing. His hair was tousled, his eyes half closed. He looked around, dazed. "He was with me all night," Madeleine said firmly, turning to the officer. Back at his hotel in Bloomsbury, something gnawed at Pierre's mind. That night, he returned to the theater. After the show, he confronted Madeleine. "I can't be your alibi. I don't remember anything." She smiled, teasing, "Oh, Pierre, you were wonderful. Don't remember? Maybe I can help jog your memory." They returned to her house. Madeleine led him to the bedroom. After Pierre had shown all the vigor of his youthful hormones, she was breathless and asked for a break to recover. Pierre went to the cabinet, took out the glass he had hidden, poured half of it into another glass, keeping the rest hidden, and offered it to her. She drank it eagerly. Within minutes, she fell asleep. Knock, knock, knock. A loud knock at the door. Madeleine awoke still drowsy and unsteady, threw on her robe, and opened the door. "Police. Madame Dufresne, we have a warrant for your arrest." She looked at Pierre. "Pierre, tell them we were together." He calmly replied, "I'm afraid I cannot. You brought me here to be your alibi, drugged me, and thought I'd prefer the glory of having slept with you over the truth. But I'm afraid I prefer the truth." She panicked. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, but I can. On the night of the crime, I'd already had too much to drink, so I only drank half of the wine you gave me and saved the rest in a glass I hid in the cabinet. Last night, after our moment together, I gave you a quarter of that half. You slept like a little angel, or rather, a little devil. The police collected the glass, still containing traces of the sleeping drug, and arrested Madeleine. As they left the room, the inspector turned to him. "Pierre, why did you give her the drugged wine?" Pierre smiled. "To be sure, the wine was indeed drugged, and get my revenge on someone who tried to use me, and still sleep peacefully, knowing she wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night to kill me. No playwright could have contrived a finer curtain call." The inspector laughed. "Pierre, you're my hero." Together they stepped into the icy London night, laughing and talking like old friends, while the street lamps glimmered above them, silent accomplices to another mystery resolved: the end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case. The Vanishing of Socrates' Bust, Scotland, November 1925. The biting wind swept across the hills of Aberdeenshire as Pierre Durand arrived at Balgowan House, accompanied by Inspector Bernard Fawcett. Both had been invited by the Graham family for a weekend in the Scottish countryside. Rest, scenery, and a bit of good conversation. The house, a well-preserved historic property, displayed its stone walls and large windows overlooking the green fields of the region. During dinner, Sir Ronald Graham, master of the house, proposed a card game for a few innocent pounds. Pierre noticed, as they played, that Sir Ronald took the game far too seriously, showing clear skill with the cards, like someone well accustomed to playing cards. After the game, everyone was invited to admire the bust of Socrates, a magnificent piece of white marble, finely sculpted, depicting the Greek philosopher with impressive realism and serenity. In the main hall, under a golden beam of light, the piece rested on a pedestal, solemn and imposing. Conversations and whiskies followed. Some guests remained in the library or the games room. Others, like Pierre and the inspector, went upstairs to rest and prepare for the next day's plans. At 2 a.m, Pierre was awakened by the sharp sound of breaking glass. He put on his dressing gown and went downstairs. Lights came on, and confused guests emerged. Some came down the hallways. Others emerged from the library, alarmed. In the hall, the pedestal stood empty. The bust of Socrates had disappeared. Sir Ronald claimed someone had stolen the bust, breaking the window to get in. The police were called, and Pierre remained silent, observing and listening closely to the testimonies. Professor Aldous said, "I heard the glass, then footsteps. When I arrived, everyone was already here." Lady Margaret said, "I was in the room. Ronald woke me. I would never leave the bust out of sight, but he wanted it displayed for the guests after dinner." Sir Ronald said, "I was in the study. I ran when I heard the noise. I saw the broken window, but the bust was already gone." Lord Edwin and Miss Elspeth said, "We were in the kitchen, having biscuits and milk. We only heard the noise." Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, with Dr. Lennox, said, "We were in the library talking. We heard a crack, then screams. No one passed through there. Everyone's alibis matched. Too perfect, almost as if rehearsed." Pierre stepped out onto the veranda. The wind was cutting. He approached the broken window, shards of glass, outside. He called out to his friend, Inspector Fawcett, and the others. "When a window is broken from the outside in, the glass falls inside. Here, it's on the outside. It was broken from the inside out." Silence. Sir Ronald turned pale. "Since the window was broken from the inside out," Pierre continued, "that tells us the culprit is still among us. But who? The alibis fit together too neatly, like links in a chain. One supports the other, which leads me to believe they were all involved." A murmur of astonishment swept through the hall. It was a meticulously staged scene, Pierre concluded, a carefully prepared theater, so that the inspector and I would witness a theft that never happened. And who would doubt the testimony of a man from Scotland Yard? Sir Ronald lowered his eyes. The motive was clear: a gambling addiction, debts piling up, and the lure of insurance money to settle them. In front of everyone, Sir Ronald confessed. He apologized and, in silence, returned the bust of Socrates to its pedestal. Later, alone with Pierre, Inspector Fawcett asked, "How did you know they were all involved?" "I only knew the culprit was still in the house. I made the collective accusation on purpose, not because I was certain, but to observe the reactions. If I were wrong, I expected to see indignation, protests, denial. Instead, what I saw on every face was discouragement, like people who know they've been found out. That was enough." The inspector laughed. "You didn't just kill two birds with one stone, you took out the whole nest." Pierre smiled faintly. "Gambling addiction is a silent disease. It drives men to despair. Maybe, with a chance, he can recover." "We'll see, Pierre. We'll see," Fawcett replied, and the two walked silently along the damp trails of the Scottish countryside as the morning mist began to rise over the hills. The end. The death of the cinema star, London, 1925. The elegant facade of the Royal Regent Theatre gleamed under the spotlight. It was the premiere of The Secret of Shadows, a highly anticipated British film. A select group of guests filled the velvet seats. Among them, Pierre Durand, invited by the studio owner after earning a notable reputation at Oxford. The leading actress, Margaret Wells, arrived radiant on the red carpet. Her beauty eclipsed the flashes of the cameras. Moments later, Vivian Drake, the supporting actress, appeared, smiling and greeting the journalists. The lights dimmed, and the film began. After the final applause, the guests moved to the theater's foyer, adorned with golden chandeliers and velvet curtains, exuded the scent of flowers and champagne. Trays of canapes circulated discreetly. The air buzzed until a scream sliced through it like a blade. "Maggie is dead!" Pierre rushed toward the side room. The actress lay pale upon the floor, a champagne glass tipped beside her. A small bruise revealed the cause. Inspector Graves took control of the scene. It was soon determined: death by a blunt blow to the head. The doors were immediately locked. No one would leave until everyone had been questioned. The statements unfolded, one by one. The director declared, "I was with my secretary in the men's room. We neither saw nor heard anything." The secretary confirmed, blushing slightly. "Yes, we were about to return, but got a bit distracted." Richard Hale, who had played Margaret's romantic partner in the film, said, "I was starving and went to the kitchen for more canapes. I spent quite a while there." The composer of the score stated, "I was speaking in the foyer with Margaret's husband. We were discussing the score for the next film." Margaret's husband added, "Indeed, we stayed together the entire time." The producer reported, "I was with the studio owner discussing future projects." The studio owner confirmed, "Exactly. We were together at the reception." The supporting actor said, "I stepped out to give interviews and greet some fans." The projectionist explained, "I remained in the projection booth. I took the opportunity to review a book for my exam." Then, Vivian Drake, her voice steady, stated, "During the reception, I went to the ladies' room, washed my hands, and returned." Lastly, the theater attendant reported, "Before the reception, I placed a new package of paper towels in the ladies' room." There was something off in Vivian's account. As the questioning continued, he discreetly approached the theater attendant. "How many sheets are in each package of paper towels?" 150, monsieur. The packages are always sealed." Pierre whispered a request. Minutes later, the theater attendant returned, carrying a bundle of neatly removed paper towels and a waste bin. Without delay, Pierre asked everyone to gather. His calm voice cut through the murmur. The audience fell silent, as if witnessing the final act of a great play. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pierre began, "everyone here has an alibi, except one." His gaze rested upon Vivian Drake. "Madame Drake, you claimed you went to the restroom and washed your hands. But did you really?" He then addressed the theater attendant. As you told us, monsieur, you prepared the ladies' room before the reception. Could you please repeat for everyone what that preparation entailed? I placed a new package of paper towels in the dispenser, sir. And how many sheets does such a package contain? A sealed package contains 150 sheets, monsieur. And you brought the things I asked you from the ladies' room here? Yes, monsieur. I brought them all. Pierre then turned to the guests and, with a theatrical gesture, began counting the sheets. 1, 2, 3, 149, 150. All the sheets were intact. Vivian crossed her arms, her voice trembling, though she struggled to maintain her composure. The manufacturer may have packed more than 150 sheets. There's a margin of error. This proves nothing. Pierre offered a slight smile. Without a word, he stepped forward and, with a sharp motion, kicked the waste bin that the theater attendant had brought from the ladies' room. It toppled, slowly spinning until it came to rest on its side, producing only a hollow sound. No sheets, no trace. He turned to the guests and stated firmly, "Even if there had been an extra sheet, it would still have been discarded here. The fact that all the sheets remain intact and the bin is empty proves that Madame Drake never went to the restroom as she claimed. She lied and is the only one without an alibi at the time of the crime. Therefore, she is the only one who could have attacked Margaret." Vivian staggered, her hands covering her face. "This proves nothing. But the words failed her. At last, sobbing, she fell to her knees. "I hated her, always in the spotlight. I would never be a star while she lived. We argued. I pushed her. She fell." The confession shattered the tense silence of the room. One shove, an impulsive act, a final act of envy. Inspector Graves gestured, and the guards approached, escorting the actress away. Relieved, he shook Pierre's hand. "How did you know the sheets would be intact?" Pierre smiled discreetly. "It was a carefully stacked deck. I asked the theater attendant to bring exactly 150 sheets and an empty bin. That way, the result of the count would leave no doubt." The inspector let out a brief sigh. Horrible to see such a talented woman with blood on her hands. Pierre added, a glint in his eyes. Worse still would have been if she had truly gone to the restroom and not washed her hands. Blood and bacteria? What a dreadful combination. Muted laughter rippled through the hall as the night's tragedy reached its denouement with a touch of ingenuity. The end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case. The Case of the Counterfeit Note, St. Albans, England, 1925. The golden afternoon bathed the main market stalls, where fruits gleamed like jewels, and the cries of vendors competed with the sound of an old barrel organ. Pierre Durand, 18 years old and keen-eyed beneath his navy blue beret, walked casually, absorbing the aromas and British accents, until a commotion pulled him off course. In the small bookshop on the corner of the square, a middle-aged man argued with the clerk, while a police officer tried, without much success, to intervene. "I'm telling you, this note is a counterfeit," exclaimed the bookseller, holding a banknote by its edges, as if handling something filthy. "And I'm telling you that's not the note I gave you," retorted the customer. "You swapped it for that one." The officer scratched his head, hesitant. Pierre stepped forward. "Excuse me, I'm Pierre Durand. Perhaps I can help." The officer raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Pierre Durand? Wait, I've heard my chief mention you. Said you helped crack some truly remarkable cases. What do you think you can do here?" Taking the note, Pierre examined it under the window light. The forgery was crude. Wrong paper, Incorrect texture, imprecise details. He looked at the customer. You said the note you gave had a serial number starting with 04071903. It's not common to check serial numbers. Why did you do that? It's my mother's birthday. When I picked it up earlier, I noticed it. That kind of thing sticks in your mind. I saw the bookseller do a sleight of hand and hide the real one. It must be in the till. Pierre checked the register drawer. There were 3 notes of the same denomination. One of them, indeed, began with the stated digits. The customer smiled, triumphant. See? It's there! That proves I'm telling the truth. Pierre remained calm. He turned to the officer. Please call the forensics team. We'll need fingerprint analysis. Fingerprints? But what for? I already proved the real note is there. Of course, my fingerprints will be on it. Not yet, sir. If your fingerprints are on the real note, that doesn't mean much. You might have handled it earlier in an entirely innocent context. There's no crime in handling an authentic note. Pierre held the counterfeit note between his fingers. But if your fingerprints are on this one, then there will be no doubt you handed the fake to the bookseller. Contrary to what you believe, it's not about you recognizing the note. It's about the counterfeit note recognizing you. If your fingerprints are here, there's no doubt it was you who handed it over. That, sir, will be the proof. The man fell silent. His eyes darted between the officer and the bookseller, who now smiled. Then, suddenly, the customer turned and bolted out the door. The officer gave chase. The bookseller, still trembling, expressed his thanks. How did you know he was lying, even with the correct serial number? Pierre adjusted his beret. When someone is too sure about a specific detail, even before it's verified, they usually want to control the narrative. He knew the note would be in the till because an accomplice had probably used it earlier. The plan was simple. Hand over a fake, mention a memorized serial number, and pretend to be the victim of a swap. The bookseller muttered, "You seem to have a sixth sense for these things." Pierre smiled. As he left the shop, the bookseller caught up with him carrying a small package. A gift. A book on esotericism. Maybe it explains your gift? Pierre chuckled, a bit awkwardly, unsure if the gesture was sincere or a jest, and accepted it. "Thank you," he said with a polite nod, and he walked away down the street, the book tucked under his arm. Yet another quiet trophy from a mystery, quietly undone. The end. Unraveling 2 thieves with just one word. Cornwall, autumn 1920. 18-year-old Pierre Durand had accepted a rare invitation. A weekend at a luxurious seaside spa in Cornwall. 6 other guests were present, all strangers to one another, but each with distinctive traits. There was Mr. Auguste Fontaine, a middle-aged man always carrying a book of French poetry and wearing a reserved expression. Lucy Reynolds, an elegant young English socialite with a passion for gardening and a gentle smile. Thomas Montgomery, a cheerful man with a stutter, whose stammering was regarded as a charming quirk. Dr. Sarah Bennett, a retired physician with a keen eye and calm voice, accustomed to attending to every detail. Lord Henry Blackwood, a charming English aristocrat and enthusiastic tennis player with refined manners. And Paul Larkin, an artist and dreamer, his hands stained with paint and his spirit creative. On Friday night, there was a light reception featuring healthy bites that made Pierre discreetly frown as he observed the guests. They exchanged trivial conversations and stifled laughter before retiring to their rooms. The next morning, as everyone gathered in the lounge for breakfast, a scream pierced the quiet. A pale hotel staff member trembled as she announced, "The office safe has been broken into. They've taken everything." The police arrived quickly, but Pierre, alert, was already at the staff member's side, surveying the scene. In the modest office, he saw papers strewn about and a window left ajar. In one corner, a thick woolen cover concealed an object, its cage-like outline faintly pressing against the fabric. Pierre pointed and asked, "What's under there?" "Oh, that's the hotel's parrot. He's been here only 2 days. We forgot to remove the night blanket this morning in all the commotion." Pierre smiled and inquired, "Has anyone stayed here before?" It's everyone's first visit." Pierre's eyes widened with satisfaction. "Excellent." He asked the inspector to gather all the guests in the dining room. When the group was seated, Pierre entered slowly, carrying something wrapped in fabric, heightening the tense anticipation. He paused dramatically, letting the silence deepen the suspense before speaking. Meet our most unlikely witness, who saw nothing but heard everything. With a decisive gesture, Pierre pulled away the fabric, revealing an ornate cage in which a young parrot sat, its curious eyes fixed on the audience. The guests exchanged bewildered looks. Fontaine raised an eyebrow. Lucy bit her lip, anxious. Lord Blackwood stiffened, and Montgomery shifted in his chair, fiddling with his cup of tea. "A parrot can mimic sounds with remarkable accuracy," Pierre said. "It even picks up on tone and emphasis." He scanned the room and addressed one guest. "Mr. Fontaine, what did you do after dinner?" Pierre asked calmly, pronouncing Fontaine in a louder tone. "I went to read in the lounge." Then he turned to another. "Miss Reynolds?" he repeated normally, raising the name Reynolds slightly. "I walked in the gardens." Finally, he faced Lord Henry Blackwood. "And you, Lord Blackwood?" Pierre spoke naturally but projected Blackwood so all could hear. Before anyone could react, the parrot stammered, "Blackwood." The room froze. Pierre stepped forward. Notice, the bird didn't just repeat a name. It stuttered it. That proves two things. Blackwood was named during the crime, and the person who said it stutters. Montgomery, nervous, spoke his accomplice's name while the safe was being broken into, and the parrot, even under its cover, heard it all. The inspector needed no further prompting and arrested both men. Later, on the terrace, Paul Larkin asked Pierre, "How did you know the parrot would say the name?" Pierre chuckled. "When I was a child, I smashed my finger with a hammer and cursed loudly. My parrot never forgot it. Whenever visitors arrived, there he was, repeating that curse. My mother was mortified." Everyone laughed heartily, until the afternoon snack was announced, "Carrot crostini with lentil spread." Silence fell at once. The end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case. Who's the Spy in Monte Carlo? Under the cover of a London street at night, Pierre Durand was ambushed, blindfolded, and taken to the headquarters of the Secret Intelligence Service. There, he received a mission: travel to Monte Carlo and identify, among 5 VIPs, Geneviève Charpentier, Victor Chevalier, Edouard Bellec, Paul Lambert, and Alma Bertrand, which one was the spy betraying the crown. His youthful face, still unknown to the public, granted him free access to the Royal Hall of the Monte Carlo Casino without arousing suspicion. Guided into the Royal Hall, Pierre slipped the invitation into his pocket and approached Geneviève Charpentier. Pierre drew near with a sly smile and extended his hand in invitation. Geneviève responded with elegance, slowly offering her left hand. Pierre bowed his head and kissed the back of her hand courteously, letting the gesture linger just slightly. "You are far too young to court women so directly," whispered Geneviève, her eyes fixed on him. "But perhaps I should make an exception." Pierre held her gaze for a moment, maintaining his provocative tone. "Perhaps we are both exceptions tonight." After their brief encounter, Pierre stepped away, leaving Geneviève intrigued, and made his way to the next suspect. Leaning against the buffet, Victor Chevalier's portly frame shifted subtly as he observed the guests before speaking in a calm voice. "My greatest adventure was a weekend at a friend's estate, where we sampled a variety of French dishes." Victor's limp handshake confirmed his limited mobility. In the center of the hall, Edouard Bellec drew attention in an exuberant outfit and dramatic gestures. "You are the life of this event," said Pierre, approaching with evident admiration. "It is not just me. It's my art that moves people." "Art is the best way to transform them," Edouard replied in an affected tone. All eyes continued to follow his flamboyant persona. By the roulette table, Paul Lambert watched the game with focused intensity. "What's the best strategy to win at roulette?" asked Pierre, noticing the slight tension in Paul's shoulders and the distant look he avoided meeting. Paul shrugged with a non-committal tilt of his head. Strategy? I have none, he admitted. I just pick a number and hope for the best. In a quieter area of the royal hall, Pierre spotted Alma Bertrand seated on a sofa, detached from the buzz around her. I prefer moments of calm, Alma confided with a sigh. I had my fill of excitement while my husband was alive. After the event concluded, the Secret Service agents escorted Pierre to his hotel room, and once inside his hotel room asked him, "Who is the spy?" Pierre pulled the invitation from his pocket, studied the crest, and sighed. "It's Geneviève Charpentier." The agents exchanged skeptical glances until one of them asked, "And how can you be sure it's her?" Pierre straightened his posture and answered calmly, "Victor Chevalier is too big and too lazy to climb, flee, or hide. Edouard Bellec loves being noticed, and a spy wants only to go unnoticed. Paul Lambert has strength, but lacks the intellect to strategize or adapt. And Alma Bertrand is at a stage in life, after the loss of her husband, where she seeks peace, not adventure." The agents fell silent, absorbing the logic laid out by the 18-year-old, but one of them pondered, "That eliminates the other suspects, but it doesn't guarantee she's the spy." Pierre explained that when he took Genevieve's hand and kissed the back of it, a courteous, brief gesture, he felt subtle calluses at the base of her fingers, exactly where one would press a gun's grip and squeeze its trigger. My direct approach, combined with the age difference, made her feel in control. She let her guard down, thinking she was playing with an innocent boy. The agents exchanged looks again, and one asked, "Are you certain?" Pierre raised an eyebrow, crossed his arms, and replied, "If you wanted absolute certainty, you shouldn't have asked a lad fresh out of school to do your job." Silence. The agents traded hesitant glances, unsure whether to place full trust in Pierre's words. The end. The case of the three shops in Cognac. It was the eve of a bank holiday in Cognac, the town where Pierre had spent his childhood vacations, and the square buzzed with a street fair. Accordion strains mingled with laughter as stalls brimmed with candied apples and wooden toys. Pierre recognized a familiar face among the vendors, Mr. Dumas, the owner of the old candy stand who used to sell him caramels as a child. "Monsieur Dumas," Pierre exclaimed with a smile. "Pierre Durand? Mon Dieu, how you've grown!" Mr. Dumas replied, visibly moved. They spoke for a few minutes. Pierre remarked on how much the town had changed, pointing out 3 cheek-by-jowl storefronts, a gardening shed brimming with shovels, a locksmith's gilded display of locks, and a grit and cement supplier. Mr. Dumas smiled, though a flicker of concern crossed his face. "Ah, mon garçon, those shops aren't the only new developments. We've been feeling small tremors throughout the day." "Tremors? Since when?" Pierre asked, instantly alert. "About 3 months now, ever since those shops moved in." At that moment, a local policeman approached to buy a candied apple. "Good morning, Officer Remy," Pierre said casually. Mr. Dumas chuckled. One of the few things that never changes in this town is Officer Remy. Always present, always kind. Remy smiled nostalgically. "You know, this square always brings back memories. It was my first week on the job, 30 years ago, when some fool tried to rob the bank with a rusty pistol and no plan. We caught him before he even made it past the teller. That was the only real adventure this town ever saw." Pierre paused, observing the fresh shop fronts, the men coming and going, the sacks of earth and tools. Pierre raised an eyebrow. "Do those new shops get much business?" Mr. Dumas shrugged. "Only the gardening shop. People buy a lot of earth lately. The others, almost no customers." Pierre said, "If we want to keep that spotless record, we need to investigate the gardening store." The officer's eyes widened. "But you're saying the shop is part of a plan to rob the bank? That's serious." He scratched his head, nervous. "Without a warrant from a judge, I can't do anything officially. I'd need concrete evidence." "We don't have time to wait for warrants," Pierre said urgently. "The robbery will likely take place tonight. Let's go speak directly with the bank's owner." The banker, a stern traditionalist, welcomed them into his home, and after some hesitation, the banker agreed to let the police hide in the bank's basement that night. Remy, 3 other policemen, and Pierre waited in silence near the vault. At 2 in the morning, they heard a faint crack, followed by the sound of a wall being breached. When the thieves finally broke through the wall on the vault's floor, the police sprang into action. Remy barked orders, and they cuffed 4: the garden shop owner, the builder, the locksmith in the tunnel, and the driver in the getaway car. After the arrests, Jean Lambert of the newspaper Le Petit Cognac approached Pierre. "What made you suspect a robbery?" "The tremors," Pierre replied. They began after those 3 shops opened. One sold digging tools, another materials to support a tunnel, and the last had expertise in locks. Even the soil was smuggled out as fake sales. And they're all beside the bank. The reporter frowned. "But how did you know it would be tonight?" "I didn't," said Pierre. "But the night before a banking holiday? It's the perfect time." The banker shook his hand. "Thanks to you, our vault, and the town's confidence, remain intact. We'll honor you at the bank tomorrow." Officer Remy, in his final week before retirement, stepped forward. "Monsieur Durand, you've kept Cognac free of bank robberies, and you've given me the last real thrill of my career. I can't thank you enough. I did it all for Monsieur Dumas. He has an account here, and I couldn't risk him not having funds to make my favorite childhood sweets," Pierre said softly. "Sometimes, you just need to listen to what the town is telling you, even when it whispers through the faintest grumbles of the earth." Pierre adjusted his beret and smiled quietly as he gazed at his photograph displayed with pride in the Employee of the Month frame, the word "eternally" inscribed beneath it. The end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case. The Mystery of the Notes on a Jazz Night, Paris, 1925. The red lights of the Fair Écarlate flickered in the mist of the early morning, while the smoke of cigarettes and the scent of cognac hung in the air. Pierre Durand, in his impeccable beret and dark blue suit, accompanied a friend to listen to the jazz band Les Flammes de Minuit that enlivened the Parisian night. The show was vibrant. The drums marked the rhythm, the bass pulsed deeply, the guitar led with energy, and the singer's voice filled the hall. When the last applause echoed, Pierre's friend remarked, "I know the musicians. Shall we see them in the dressing room?" Before they could get there, a shout cut across the hall. "The night's money is gone!" cried the cashier, terrified. The police arrived quickly, along with Inspector Beaumont, an old acquaintance of Pierre. After a brief exchange of glances, the inspector smiled. "Since you are here, young man, come, perhaps your sharp eyes can help." The two began the questioning. In the dressing room, the guitarist, a thin young man with disheveled black hair and an intense gaze, was putting new strings on his guitar. He explained that they had snapped during the last song, but fortunately, the audience hadn't noticed. In the kitchen, the bassist, heavy-set, with an ever-hungry expression and calloused fingers, rummaged through food tins looking for biscuits, claiming hunger after the performance. At the entrance, the drummer, a tall man with a relaxed posture and restless eyes, was poking through the trash can while smoking a cigarette, saying only that he needed some air. And finally, at the bar, the singer, an elegant young woman wearing a tight dress and with a velvety voice, adjusted her skirt and ordered a dry martini. When all had been questioned, the inspector sighed. "Nothing makes sense? And you, Pierre?" Pierre adjusted his burgundy tie and replied calmly, "I believe I know who the thief is and where the money lies." The inspector, surprised, ordered everyone gathered in the dressing room. The silence was heavy when Pierre spoke. "It makes no sense for the cashier to steal from himself. The barman was behind the counter all night. That leaves only you, the band. The bassist could hide it in a tin of biscuits, but that would be a risky hiding place, since the staff frequently visited for a snack. The drummer could use the trash, but sooner or later someone would notice the money inside. As for the singer, we saw her fiddling with her skirt, but her dress is so tight-fitting that it could not possibly conceal such a large sum without being noticed. Pierre stepped closer to the guitarist, looking straight at him. But inside a guitar, the money could easily pass through customs unnoticed. The guitarist turned pale. The police loosened the guitar strings and, through the round sound hole, pulled out the bundle of notes. The inspector, astonished, asked, "But how did you know it was in there?" Pierre smiled. The performance was flawless until the last song. Suddenly, the guitarist played with disproportionate force. He needed to break the strings deliberately to make room to slip the money inside. When we saw him replacing the strings, he was really covering up the crime and making it seem that the inside of the instrument was inaccessible. A silence followed by applause filled the room. The singer, amused, winked at Pierre. "I'll compose a song in your honor, mon amour. It is going to be called Put It in the Hole." Pierre immediately blushed. "I just hope it doesn't become too popular. Otherwise, I'll have a lot to explain to my mother." Everyone laughed. The mystery was solved. The end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case. The Beauty of Cold Logic. Paris, 1920. The January wind came thin and persistent, and the city's fireplaces barely broke the cold in one's bones. Pierre Durand crossed the courtyard of his old school, invited to speak to the younger students. His name had been turning up in the papers, tied to cases solved with uncommon reasoning. Professor Bellamy, his former teacher, introduced him with pride, mentioned the recent headlines, and asked, "When did you realize you had a mind for logical deduction, Pierre?" Pierre took a deep breath. "I was back in my second year. The room, the chill, the desks, everything exactly as it is now." The heating had broken down. It was one of the coldest winters on record. Fogged up panes, numb fingers. On Bellamy's desk, a red apple, a gift from a diligent student. The headmaster called him to the office. He stepped out for a few minutes. As soon as the door closed, Jules, the class troublemaker, stood up, walked to the desk, and started eating the apple. 2, 3 bites. Classmates whispered for him to stop. He threatened anyone who complained. Hearing footsteps in the corridor, he dropped the apple core and ran back, throwing himself into his seat. Bellamy came in, saw what was left of the fruit, and didn't lecture. He simply said, "Up, everyone!" The class sprang up, fear and silence snapping into place. Bellamy then walked slowly between the rows. He lightly brushed a hand over each seat. When he stopped behind one of the chairs, he stared at the student sitting in it and said, calmly, "To the headmaster's office, Jules. Now, I hope the apple was worth the punishment. No telltales, no peel in a pocket. Only silence and startled looks. Glances crossed, whispers sprang up. How did Bellamy know it had been Jules? When the opportunity came, I approached Bellamy and asked in a low voice, 'How did you know it was him?' Bellamy smiled and explained, 'The room was freezing, Pierre. In that cold, the wood kept the body's warmth for minutes. The palm is enough to tell. When I had everyone stand, I ran my hand over the seats. Most still held the warmth of whoever had been sitting, except one. Jules's was cold, ice cold, like someone who'd been away long enough to eat an entire apple.' I was amazed at the clarity of the reasoning. A simple, almost invisible gesture revealed what eyes could not see. In that instant, I understood that we often trust our eyes too much, when other senses, like touch, can reveal the truth just as well. A girl raised her hand, amused. I went through something similar the other day. I arrived early. It was just me and one classmate. I smelled a fart. I asked if it was him. He denied it. I knew it hadn't been me, so it had to be him. If only my sense of smell had been turned off. The class laughed. Pierre nodded. Deduction by elimination, mademoiselle. Keep that. It will give you good stories. The bell rang. In the corridor, Pierre said goodbye to Bellamy and stepped out into the courtyard, certain he had planted good seeds there. The end. Enjoying the mystery? Then don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment. Your support helps keep the adventures of Pierre Durand alive. Thank you, and see you in the next case.
Door swings wide, bell goes ding. Dust on boots, that crooked grin. Neon hum, my jaw goes hard. You brought your storm into my yard. I changed the locks, I cleaned the slate. You missed the train, you show up late. Some fallen star. Empty words in a borrowed charm. How dare you come into my bar? Last time here you left a tab. Left me too with nothing but gas. I healed my floor, I tuned my heart. You strutting like a fresh new